Today, how to engage your audience in a speech or presentation. Now, why do you want to grab your audience's attention? Why do you want to engage your audience? That may seem like an obvious question, but most speakers think that they are grabbing their audience's attention because they have a story that's so great or a speech that's so great. But the bottom line is this: you want to get your audience involved. Your audience wants to be heard, they want to be involved. And no matter how good your content is, if it's a monologue where they're not involved at all, they are going to mentally check out of your presentation at some point, if not at many points. You have 8 seconds to grab them in the beginning, and you also have times throughout your speech that you need to check in with them, make sure they're still with you. It's a ride that you're taking them along, so make sure they're with you all the way. Use these 7 tips throughout your speech and you'll make sure your audience is always engaged. Tip number 1 is to ask a question. If you ask a question at the beginning of your speech, you get them involved right away. Have you ever done this? Raise your hand if this. A lot of speakers you'll see get their audience involved right away, and that way they're on the ride with you right off the bat. Number 2 is to tell a story. You don't need to say, "Thanks for having me here, I'm happy to be here." You can jump right in. It was 1989, blah, 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 blah. This happened. You can get right into your story. There's no need to necessarily do all those unpleasant pleasantries in the beginning of your speech, because if you jump right into your story, our brains are hardwired to attune and tune into stories when someone's saying them. So if you start right with a story, the audience is sitting down, they're saying, "Oh my gosh, there's something about to happen. He's about to tell me a story, or she's about to tell me something important. I better pay attention." Number 3 is an anecdote. So you can tell a popular story or a popular analogy, something that you saw on TV, something that happened to someone else, but make sure it also fits into the premise of your own message. So you can start with an anecdote of another story. So it's similar to telling a story, but not your story specifically that happened to you, but maybe something you saw or a popular story. There's one of my speeches where I like to talk about Roger Bannister because I heard one of my favorite speakers, Les Brown, say it once about 1954 when he broke the 4-minute mile. When I talk about overcoming beliefs or overcoming your limits, I'll start with that anecdote, that story, to get people engaged in a story, not my story, an anecdote to get them ready for what I have to say next. Number 4 is an audience demonstration. Now, once again, I'll say this is more for after the beginning of the speech. You may not want them to be involved too much in the beginning of your speech because they don't know you yet, maybe they're not comfortable with you yet, but you can get them to do an activity at some point in your speech. Here's the caveat for that. Be specific. Don't just say, "Look to your neighbor and talk about something, da 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 da." Everyone, look to your right, tell the person to your right, da 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 da. Because if you get people saying, look to your neighbor, one's looking left, one's looking right, it can be a mess and it can be complicated. Trust me, people want to be told exactly what they need to do. Don't think that you're dumbing it down or insulting your audience. Be specific. You're in command from the stage. Get them to do some type of demonstration. If we get kinesthetically involved, we're more engaged in your message. Remember, there are 3 types of learners: visual, auditory, I almost forgot that, and kinesthetic. And kinesthetic allows us to move, allows us to be engaged. The next method is to take a survey. This is similar to asking a question, but you're dividing the room into people who have done something and who haven't. Raise your hand if you've done this. Raise your hand if you haven't. Then you've touched both sides, or taking a survey. Do you know how many people in Canada, da 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 da? That is a survey question. Once again, you're getting your audience involved in your speech. Tip number 6 and 7 rhyme, so you'll remember them. Remember 2 words for 6 and 7, repeat and complete. Tip number 6, get them to repeat something you say. Repeat after me, just tell them. Say what you're gonna say, and then they get to say what you just said. If they repeat, there's something about the mind that when someone says something themselves that you've said, they remember it more than if you just say it to them. You say, "Repeat after me," you say it, they remember it a little bit. When they repeat it back to you, it's cemented in their brains. It gets them involved, it gets them to remember your content. And the rhyming word, last tip, number 7, complete. Give them a popular phrase to complete. In one of my stories, I say, "Happy wife," and then they say happy life. Everybody knows this cliche. I did it at the beginning of my story. Everybody was in with me. They were thinking of their own family. Guys are thinking about their wives. Wives are thinking maybe about some of the ways their husband could make them happier. There's a lot of things that they're thinking. They're engaged. They're ready to go. So popular phrase, get them to complete it for you. So remember these 7 tips. Your audience needs to be engaged. They need to be with you on your speech. Use these 7 tips at the beginning, throughout your speech. Don't overdo it, but use it, and your audience will be with you for your entire presentation.
And remember, if you got value from this video, go right down below the video, click here to subscribe.